Our speaker is Magda Martinez-Mata from University of Missouri, St. Louis, United States. Today she presents her talk on the topic, Comparison of Parasocial Love with Real-Life Romantic Love in Terms of Subjective Experience and Brain Activity.
Hi everybody, I'm Magda Martinez. I'm a second year PhD student at the Department of Psychology Science at the University of Missouri St. Louis. And today I'm presenting my research called Comparison of Parasocial Love with Real-Life Romantic Love in Terms of Subjective Experience and Brain Activity. So I would like to start by defining what is parasocial love. So, parasocial love is having romantic feelings toward media figures despite having no reciprocal interaction. These media figures could be actors, singer, actors, or even fictional characters. There has been an increase of interest on research about parasocial love since nowadays we live in an interconnected world. For example, in a study of 2021, 61% of participants reported ever having a parasocial beloved. Even there have been some studies suggesting that parasocial love seems similar to real life love. That is a typical romantic love that we experience in our daily basis. Also, more related about real life love, participants reported that real life beloved make them feel more positive, balanced, greater arousal, and lower dominance than control conditions that could be, for example, a friend or a stranger. However, even if that we have this perspective about how is the experience of real life love, we don't have anything related about how is the balance, arousal, and dominance in parasocial love. In addition to this, we have another perspective to understand how is the experience of love. And this is how the brain is processing this information. So we have something called event-related potential components, also known as ERP components, that are patterns of electrical activity in our brain that are gonna let us know how is this love information being processed. So, for example, for these ERP components, the literature have found two components that are important related about real life love. For example, we have the late positive potential, also known as LPP, and the early posterior negativity, also known as EPN. So, in this study of 2019, the participants were watching pictures on a screen while their brain activity was measured with a cap that was placed on their heads. Well, of course, they were watching these pictures. So, from this study, it was found that the beloved that we can see here in the graphic of the left, it has like a more positive signal that we can see here that below is positive and above is negative compared with a friend and a stranger. And this LPP component is related to motivated attention. So the participant reported more motivated attention watching the pictures of the beloved compared with the friend and stranger. Additionally to this, also we have the other component that is called EPN or early posterior negativity that also we found in this case that there was more negative information that we can see now above in this line compared with the friend and a stranger. So in this case, EPN is related more to automatic attention. So in few words, with this study, with this component is that the participants watching the beloved pictures, they elicit a more automatic attention towards their beloved pictures compared with the friend and stranger. So in this case, the LPP and the EPN component is showing us how these two types of motivations are going to be different for the beloved compared with these other two more neutral conditions. Even that we have these really good approaches about how the brain is processing real life romantic love, we don't have anything about how are these ERP components being processed with parasocial love. For this reason, the objective of my study is to compare the subjective experience and event-related potential responses to real-life beloved and parasocial beloved. With this, my hypotheses are that the subjective feelings and the ERP components will be First, stronger for the parasocial and real life beloved than for a friend and a stranger, but also similar between the parasocial beloved and the real life beloved, something that the previous literature has suggested. So, for my study, I recruited 12 participants, which age was around from 20 to 47 years old, with a mean age of 28.9 years. Gender: 7 participants were women, 3 men, and 2 other participants reported having other gender. From these participants, there were 2 types. The first one is a type of participant is that they reported having a only parasocial beloved, compared with the other type of the second type of participants that they reported having a parasocial beloved, but also a real life beloved. This condition called parasocial real, while the other that they only have a parasocial beloved was parasocial only. And also they needed to have a normal or corrected to normal vision. First, we ask them some or apply some questionnaires related about the love feelings towards the parasocial love, and also if they have a real life love toward this last one, and friendship question. So some example of these are how long they have known their beloved or the friend, also how well they know them, or for example, other could be how long they have had these romantic feelings or friendship feelings. In addition to that, also we apply the infatuation and attachment skill to the parasocial love and the real life beloved, and also the parasocial love skill for both beloved conditions. After applying these questionnaires, now we apply the measurement of the brain activity with the event-related potential components. So, based on this, we had 4 conditions that in this case were parasocial beloved, the real life beloved, friend, and stranger. So in this case, we have 5 pictures per condition. So with this, first we applied 2 tasks. The first one was a standard passive viewing task to elicit the late positive potential, the LPP component. So in this standard passive viewing task, just the participant was sitting down. We were measuring their brain activity with a cap while they were just watching pictures passing by a screen. And here we can see a representation of this task. First, there was a fixation cross, then it was presented a picture of all the 4 conditions, and then a blank screen. So in this case, there were 30 trials per condition. So this cycle was repeated 30 times per condition. And in this way, we elicit this late positive potential from the participants. And after this first task, then we apply a second task called Rapid Serial Visual Presentation Task to elicit the early posterior negativity component, also known as EPN. In this case, also the participant was just sitting down while we were measuring their brain activity, and they were watching pictures. But in this case, the pictures were passing super fast through on the screen. So, for example, in this case, there were 3 pictures per second, and at the end we have 300 trials per condition. So after finishing the second task, we stop recording the brain activity of the participants, and then we measure how were their subjective feelings with the self-assessment mannequin. So with this scale, we measure the balance, the arousal, and dominance that the participant reported for each picture that were presented in the 2 previous tasks. So that was everything that was done for this experiment from this design. So about my results, about the participants' characteristics. So we recruited 7 parasocial and real life participants. So it means that 7 participants reported having 2 types of beloved, while only 5 participants only reported having the parasocial beloved. Also, some inf important information that we obtained, it was about how long they have this love of friendship feelings. And we found that the participant reported having longer friendship feelings compared romantic feelings towards the parasocial and real life. However, even there was this difference, there were no significant difference. Also, participants about their gender, they reported to be heterosexual, bisexual, and lesbian. And also, we recruited the gender of their both beloved. The gender of their parasocial and real life beloved match in all the participants except for one participant, but that participant reported being bisexual, so that will make sense. Then, related about the infatuation attachment skill, this skill, how its name says, has two sub-skills. The infatuation, that is more the passionate love or attraction, and the attachment, that is more this compassionate love. So related about the infatuation, we didn't found any significant difference with the parasocial and real life. But with the attachment subskill, we found that the participant reported a greater attachment towards the real life compared with the parasocial. Then with the parasocial love skill, this skill also have two sub-skills, the first one being emotional component and then the second a physical component. So with the emotional component, we found that the participant reported a more feeling more emotional toward the real life beloved compared with the parasocial beloved. However, with the physical sub-skill, something that we didn't expect, it was that there was no significant difference. But then analyzing more in deep this skill, we found that the physical component was more related about the idea of having this interaction with this beloved compared with actually having this interaction, which will make sense that in both cases there are no significant difference. Then, with the self-assessment mannequin for the component of the balance, we found that the participants felt more pleasant when viewing their real life and parasocial beloved than the stranger, but not with the friend. However, this sample is small, so but we can see a tendency of being, at least for the real life, having a more pleasant compared with the friend. Also, then with the arousal, we found the same result that the participants felt more excited when viewing the real life and parasocial beloved pictures than the stranger. And then with the friend, there was no significant difference. And finally, with the dominance, there were no significant effects that were found. Finally, with the electrical activity of the brain, first with the late positive potential, with the LPP, we found that the LPP was greater for the parasocial, that here we can see in black, and the real life beloved. In this case, remember that the scale is inverted, so below it's more positive and above is more negative. And since in here it's positive, it means that the parasocial and real life beloved were eliciting a more motivated attention compared with the friend and the stranger. However, this is just a description because there's still a statistical analysis to be done. Finally, with the early posterior negativity, we found that this EPN was greater for the parasocial, that in this case we want a more negative information, that it will be above here in the black line. So EPN was greater for the parasocial beloved than the real life beloved, friend, and stranger. So that will mean that at least for the participants, the parasocial beloved elicit a more automatic attention compared with the real life friend and stranger. However, again, this is just a description of the graphic since there's still a statistical analysis to be done. So, with all the previous results, the participant reported higher score in the IS attachment and parasocial love emotional subskills for the real life beloved than the parasocial beloved. Also, the participant reported feeling more pleasant and excited for both beloveds than for the stranger. Also, they reported more motivated attention that it was obtained from the LPP information for both beloveds than for the friend and stranger. And also, they presented a more automatic attention elicit for the EPN for the parasocial beloved than for the real life beloved friend and stranger. So we can see that the parasocial love and the real life romantic love are having some similarities that were suggested on the previous literature. So, considering all this information for future directions is focus that any assumption on real life love could be potentially inference to parasocial love. And this could be an example. The regulation of the love feelings now apply for the parasocial love. And I consider this could be an important suggestion since nowadays we are living in an interconnected world that is being involved in so much of the digitally environments. And well, that will be all for me. Thank you so much. I will be waiting for your questions on the next session.